Hey guys, good morning and welcome to Max Talk. What I'm going to talk to you about today is gear. I'm not just going to talk about sort of specific pieces of gear, but I want to talk about what the concept is when you're setting up your kit, why you may or may not want to wear certain types of equipment for whatever it might be, patrolling, defense, etc. So, to start off with, the first thing I would say, in accordance with the MVT Fight Light concept, is that you want to go as light as possible. Unfortunately, that in itself is understood because there's a nuance to that. You want to go as light as possible based on having the equipment that you need to perform the task that you're doing. So, if I'm going to carry a handgun or a rifle, depending specifically what it is that I'm going to be doing at that time, I'm going to need a certain amount of equipment to sustain the operation of that. So what do I mean by that? So, well, you're not in the military here, so you don't have to, carry everything that they throw at you, including the kitchen sink. But for example, if I'm going to carry a rifle and go on patrol, there's some part of that which depends on what type of patrol you're going to go on. I need to carry enough magazines should I get enough ammunition, should I get into trouble, that I have something to allow me to break contact and get away from there. I got to carry a med kit. I got to carry basic water, sustainment food, and depending on the environment, protective clothing, etc., for that environment and that time that I'm going to be out there. So, although I'll say to you, go as light as possible, if you're operating in any way, in the same way that a light infantryman operates, whether you're foot or vehicle mounted or both, then you're going to have a certain amount of equipment. It's going to weigh a certain amount. It's going to be 30 to 50 pounds worth of gear. But what you want to do is be careful that it just doesn't get beyond that. The whole, one is none, two is one thing, where people are just carrying everything. You've got to learn not to carry all that stuff, just carry the basic amount of sensible gear. So, what's going to impact this is that you, depending on the terrain and the weather, so terrain and weather are going to have an impact on what you need to wear and carry. At the same time, if you plan on shorter operations or operations that are more sustained by, for example, vehicles, etc., then you can hopefully plan to carry less on the person. If, for example, it's winter and you plan to spend, multiple nights out, you're going to have to carry a big ruck full of stuff to sleep in, etc., food, that kind of thing. The longer you can get away with less clothing in the summer, but if it's the heat and the humidity, then you're going to have to carry water, and obviously depending how long you're going to be out for, food and water, some kind of shelter, etc., for that period of time. So if you plan on generally being out for less time, then you can worry about sustainment less. So what I'm going to focus on today is the idea of kind of short-term operations, nothing more than, say, 24 hours, where you're not really planning on going out and sleeping in the woods. You're probably going to be out for a lot less than 24 hours. You might be going on a 12-hour patrol, etc., even less. And what kind of equipment you can think about for that. Now, just to go back kind of historically, what I used to talk about a lot at the beginning of when I started Max Velocity Tactical a number of years ago was I used to talk about the old-fashioned belt kit. This is an old one that I pulled out. It's not properly rigged up, but it's got sustainment pouches around the back. It's got ammunition. It's got a big, yoke pad here. It's got big suspenders on it. Okay, this is probably not what I'm going to recommend for generally what we're going to do, but there's a lot of good points to this. This is a really good rig for light infantry type dismounted operations. You can carry comfortably a good deal of your sustainment and fighting gear which sits around the back of your hips. That ledge there also, if you're wearing a backpack, that also acts as a kind of a ledge for it to sit on, which is why we generally wouldn't use the waist strap on a Bergen, on a ruck, because it would sit nicely on here. This is very similar to the concept of the old Alice system, which you're probably more familiar with in the US. This is very much a British Army thing, the belt kit, the old school belt kit. And it still remains popular, where you'll see guys who, they might be, depending on what kind of operation they're doing, they might be wearing a plate carrier with the pouches, etc. on the plate carrier, but you'll also see them just as much in an old-fashioned belt kit, probably put together better than this one, which is not a very good example. But what that gives them the option is, nowadays everybody wears plates all the time. That gives them the option to wear a slick plate carrier with or without this. Now, why am I talking about this? If you're operating in a hot, humid environment with maybe adverse terrain, and you're going out for a number of days, that sounds to me exactly like the jungle. If you're doing that, this is excellent. Also, the way it's worn, it doesn't constrict the upper body so much, so it allows you to sweat more. And what you'll notice with all the sustainment stuff around the back, historically you were supposed to carry like 24 hours to 48 hours worth of sustainment equipment here. And what you would do is you get to your patrol base and you sit down and you actually kind of turn this around, and you could administrate yourself from these pouches. And that's not even including the backpack or the large ruck that you may be carrying. So that's the general idea of that. This is ideal for those kind of harsh terrain, humid, hot, long-term operations where you need to sustain yourself as a light infantryman in the field. Now, I'm not going to say that you should be wearing that or using that piece of equipment generally nowadays. So what I prefer is the idea of the battle belt. Okay, now this can be anything that you want. It's kind of a glorified, I could use the word duty belt, right? So I don't have suspenders on this. I actually have Velcro on the inside, which works great in the summer because then it fits on the Velcro on the outside of my belt. If I'm wearing a lot of warm clothing, it doesn't necessarily work so well. But the point is that I don't wear so much on this that it's going to fall down. So a quick idea of what I've got on this is, ignore that because it's a pouch for my target systems at the ranges. I got two 5.56 mag pouches, two pistol mag pouches, a rolled up dump pouch, an IFAK. You can either throw water in here or I put a radio in here on the ranges. I got a knife, I got a handgun, I got a tourniquet, and I got a multi-tool. Now, in the days after the belt kit that I was just showing you, in the sort of the 2000s, what the thing was, everything went onto a plate carrier and everyone was carrying a lot of stuff on plate carriers. That's not necessarily comfortable. It's not great in hot environments, although we did it in Iraq and Afghanistan, younger days or whatever, okay? I wouldn't want to do that now. The idea of the battle belt is twofold. Firstly, it downloads a bunch of stuff off that plate carrier down to your hips and what you wear on a belt. The other thing is, because it's so lightweight and comfortable, you can wear this like all the time. So if you're just wandering around the home base or whatever it is, whatever you're doing around the patrol base, then obviously rifle within arm's reach at all times, you've got this on, you have got a couple of reloads here, you've got your handgun, you've got your IFAK, you've basically got a simple equipment load on you, and you're not having to wear the full chest rig or the full plate carrier, etc. So this is a great idea, and you can have as much or as little on this as possible. Part of the idea of this is there's not so much around the back that you can't sit in a chair or a vehicle comfortably. So this works just as well for vehicle operations as it does for dismounted operations. Okay, so next thing. If I'm going to carry a certain amount of equipment on me, I'm going to go outside the wire as it is, then that battle belt on its own with the two mag pouches isn't really going to cut it for me. So I've got to carry more ammunition and more equipment. It actually is one of my SOR chest rigs, although there are a number of chest rigs like this on the market, so I'm not doing this to sell this rig, okay? But what this does is it allows you to carry 4 more magazines, more around the sides if you want to. Put extra pouches on here to carry sustainment items, notebook, book and map around the back. And what's great about this is it's not that constrictive, and what we prefer to do is not have too much, like a double stack of mags, too many pouches on the front of it. You sometimes hear this myth that in a chest rig you can't go prone. It's a complete myth. It becomes a problem if you have too much stuff here, but actually I find that in a chest rig and even a plate carrier, it actually helps me go prone. It gives me a better position, and then it's actually very easy to get to magazines. Whereas if you've got them in the old school belt kit, you've got to get back down here and get them. Whereas if I'm wearing it, I can just get the mag here. I'm just doing all my reloads right here. And it doesn't get in the way of crawling. So it's a bit of a myth. But that's why you want to go single stack mags across the front. So it's not going to constrict you too much if you're operating in a hot or humid environment. One of the big issues with plates is that people don't want to wear them because it gets hot, and also they're a little bit heavier. Okay, that's a function of PT. It's also a function of what you think the threat is and whether or not you feel the need to wear the plates. And I'll talk about that in a second. What you can do with this rig and a number of others on the market is you can unclip the straps and have a slick plate carrier where you've got the other straps. And what you do is you can wear this, for example, as a chest rig with these straps, or you can clip it to a slick PC. That gives you a lot of versatility. It also allows you to, for example, if you're moving somewhere and you're going to conduct offensive operations, you can move there with the chest rig on and the plate carriers, the plates in a ruck, etc., which is going to help with your movement, especially if you're moving over arduous terrain in the heat. And then you can kind of rig up with your plates, clip it on, so you're ready to go with a great amount of protection. It's always going to be a debate between firepower, protection, and mobility. That's how much ammunition you carry, what kind of protection you wear in terms of the plates or not plates, and general mobility of how that kind of, how much you weigh, the terrain that you're going to be moving over, how much equipment you're going to be carrying, the weather, etc., as to whether, it's always a calculated risk as to what you're going to do. So for example, one thing is people might say, well, I'm just going on a reconnaissance patrol, so I'm going to be sneaky. All right, that's great. So you're on a reconnaissance patrol, and either on the way to or back from the reconnaissance patrol or at the objective itself, you become compromised and you are being pursued. At that time, you're going to wish you had more than the 2 mags that you would have had if you just went with the battle belt. Okay, so how many mags is a basic load to have? I mean, 4 here, 2 on the belt, 1 in the magazine, so that's 7 magazines. That's probably a good minimum. If you're deliberately going somewhere to conduct operations where you're going to expend ammunition, then you're going to want to think about carrying more ammunition. One thing to think about with that is if you can reduce the ammunition or the equipment on the person, and you can create more of a supply situation where you have, for example, vehicles or ATVs or whatever it is that are bringing ammunition and supplies forward and taking casualties to the rear, you're reducing the amount of equipment on the person and you're allowing them to have better tactical mobility. It's always going to be a balance. You're going to have to carry that 30 to 50 pounds of equipment on the person. You're going to need the fitness to do that, but you don't want it doesn't want to be too much. It doesn't want to be too much equipment. Okay, so if I'm going to wear plates, so here I've actually got shot stop level 3 plus green tip plates in here. They weigh 4.6 pounds each. They're really thin, okay, and they are the best in terms of being adequate for the threat, but not being too heavy and not being too thick. If I would recommend to you that if you are able to wear plates in any kind of environment that has potential to become kinetic, then you should wear plates, because it's seriously going to reduce the risk of penetrating trauma to the torso. Where that's going to start becoming an issue is where the weight of the plates and equipment is going to negatively impact you because it's super hot, because you've got to move over hard terrain because of any number of reasons, or you just want to be super sneaky and you don't want to be trying to do a close target reconnaissance wearing a plate carrier. Okay? Back to what I said about the chest rig. But here I've got 3 mags, I've got a tourniquet, I got a pouch for night vision here, I got pouches for more ammunition if I'm going on a raid or something, get a couple more mags on the rig. And around the back here I've got this zip-offable pouch which actually expands pretty large, and it's also got a water bladder in it, so that allows me to carry a very basic amount of equipment. Probably any more than that, any more than I can put in the back here, probably starts to make me a tactical no-go, because at that point I'm wearing a battle belt, I'm carrying a rifle, I'm carrying this rig, okay, which right now weighs about 15 pounds. I could load it up to probably 25 pounds. And then you got to start to think about, how am I going to be sneaky? How am I going to take and break cover if I start to add large backpacks or whatever onto this loadout? On that note, okay, so this is just a small, I should use this as my gym bag, right? So this is a small, like 14-liter backpack. You can go to a 30, 35-liter backpack, depending on what you're doing. If it's the winter and you've got to get some bulky but light warm gear in there, then you might want to think about a bigger backpack, a 30, 35-liter backpack. If I'm going to go out and it's temperate climate, and I'm wearing my battle belt, I'm wearing my chest rig, and I'm wearing this, that's probably an ideal kind of loadout weight that I'm going to be carrying. I can get sufficient additional equipment in here for whatever it is that I need to do the task. I can take 24 hours worth of food, 24 hours worth of water, some spare magazines, whatever equipment I need, and I shouldn't really think about going more than that. Again, with the chest rig, with the plate carrier, if I was to expand this on the back, unzip it and it expands, probably that's going to carry roughly the same amount of equipment, but I got to balance it against the fact that I've got that 10 pounds worth of plates in here, and so I don't probably want to carry more than that. The other aspect of that is that if you are wearing plates, particularly if they're thick plates, and you're wearing a backpack, it starts to make it uncomfortable. Normally a backpack is a really comfortable way of carrying equipment. If you're wearing plates, it starts to pull it right out rearwards rather than just sitting down on your shoulders. You then also get too many straps around the shoulders, and it becomes kind of difficult and binds you up when you're trying to operate your weapon. I would suggest that if you are, for example, going to be wearing a chest rig and a battle belt of whatever nature, then you can probably backload stuff into a backpack rather than plussing this thing up too much. You've got, between this and this, you've got stuff on to fight with. Here, because it's comfortable to wear stuff on a backpack, you can put some of the excess weight and you're going to be fine. So one of the problems I see out there is that people, they don't really have an idea about gear. They just want to, get what the cool guys are wearing on Instagram. And a lot of what the cool guys are wearing on Instagram isn't suitable for what you might be doing. You might be looking at pictures or videos of like SWAT team guys, direct action guys, and it just depends on what you're going to be doing. The other aspect is people not wanting to wear ballistic plates simply because they're a little bit heavy. I feel naked without ballistic plates, having worn them. So I'm going to take a very serious look at whether or not I'm going to wear ballistic plates or not. Kind of getting into a whole different idea there. For example, if we start to talk about patrolling, then if I'm going to sneak around some enemy encampment, then I don't want to be wearing plates. I want to be wearing as little equipment as possible. But then let's just take that a step back. Why on earth am I going to be sneaking around enemy encampment? If we start to talk about close target reconnaissance patrols, etc., we want to be gathering information from as far out as possible, preferably from some kind of observation post. So, depending on the terrain, it might not make a great deal of difference whether I'm wearing plates or not, because I'm going to be sitting up on a ridge with an optic. So what I suggest is to sort of back away from some of the assumptions that you see about, what it means to be sneaky beaky and what it means to wear plates, and I don't want to wear plates because they're heavy, etc. What you should consider is you need to have, if you're gonna operate in this kind of manner, you need to work on your physical fitness. You need to then make some good judgment calls on what the nature of the environment is you're operating in. Generally, you want to have sufficient ammunition and wear body armor plates, if possible, if there's any kind of kinetic threat. If you then start to look at the environment and then you start to see that you've got harsh terrain, humidity, etc., that may have an impact on that. But some of that can be controlled by the way you plan these operations. If I decide that I'm going to go on a jungle operation for 5 days in the bush, then I'm going to have some specific considerations. Things like body armor plates are probably going to go by the by, okay? But if I decide that I don't need to do that, but I can just be doing some other kind of short-term things, and what is my actual mission, then kind of use that judgment call to bring it back to something more realistic. So, in summary here, give it some thought as to the gear that you really need to wear. Don't base it on what the latest cool guys are wearing on Instagram. A lot of those guys might be doing direct action stuff anyway, and they'll have specific considerations. Base it around what the operations are that you think you're going to need to conduct, and then look carefully at the balance between firepower, protection, and mobility. Obviously, the more firepower is and the more ammunition, the more protection as in the ballistic plates that you take, then that kind of involves less mobility unless you can bring that back up with physical fitness. So I would say there's probably a basic level of a certain amount of ammunition to carry. Let's just make that 7 magazines right now. And if I have the ability to wear plates, then I would like to do so. One of the nuances of the plate wearing thing is you, for example, don't want to buy heavy steel plates. You want to buy something that you might have to spend on it, but you want to get something that balances a high level of protection versus the actual weight and thickness of the plate. So that's what I've got with the Shot Stop level 3 green tip special threat plates that I've got in my rig, and I can wear them pretty comfortably. However, always wearing plates is going to somehow affect your mobility, and if you're on some kind of operation where you figure there's less chance of being in an actual firefight and being compromised, then you may find that there's a balance between wearing just the kind of the battle belt and the chest rig with perhaps a small patrol pack, and then that doesn't, you've got more mobility. Then you've got more ability to move faster, and you've got more ability to move in the heat and over the terrain, etc. And so that's also going to have an effect. One thing that should seriously be considered is that if you carry too much gear, it's going to negatively impact your performance on a patrol, because you're going to be interested in humping the gear. Depending on your fitness levels, what that means is you're going to lose your situational awareness. You're going to make bad decisions as you get more tired in maybe the heat of a hot summer day, when you're faced with terrain, and you're going to start taking the easy options and the less tactical, the less best tactical decisions, which is probably going to likely get you in more trouble. And then when you get in that trouble, you're going to have to dump the gear anyway, and just hope that once you dump that heavy ruck, that you have enough on you in the rest of the gear that you carry that you can get yourself out of that situation and break contact and survive. there's a lot of concepts there, and I probably got to stop myself talking because I could go on about this for a long time. Gear is a kind of a journey. I've been at this since like 1990, okay, and I've seen things change, and I've seen things change for different operational environments, and then as gear itself has improved, and you need to be able to sort of take that and massage it to what you might be doing, and you're probably going to end up with a box or several boxes of gear that you've experimented with over the years as you sort of move on your gear journey. Guys, I hope that helps. I'm happy to sort of answer questions or do more of this. We'll see how this video is received. Remember, this was not about, you know, recommending a certain specific piece of equipment. It was more about the concept of why and how you may build your kit and how you may wear it for specific missions. Thanks very much.